All right. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Waalaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome. So glad that you could join us on this Saturday morning/afternoon to talk about financial sustainability. We want to welcome you again for our series of CISNA webinars for leadership. We have a special guest with us today, Brother Tayyab Yunus, and I will introduce him shortly. But again, I would like to remind everyone that we will continue to provide these webinars based on school needs that from the feedback that we receive from you in our visits to schools, in our conversations with school leaders, and what's happening in the WhatsApp chat groups. We also encourage you to join as members. We can bring you services and resources, but we also need your support. So we encourage you that if you're not a member, to please become a member of CISNA. And in the next few series, we will also talk about accreditation with CISNA, and we encourage you to become a CISNA accredited school, which will help you become the best Islamic school that you can possibly be. So again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. And today we have with us Brother Tayyab Yunus, and I will give you a short, there's so much we can say about Brother Tayyab, but I will only give you a very brief synopsis of his expertise. Tayyab is the founder and CEO of Intuitive Solutions, which was established in 2002, a social enterprise. From 9 locations around the world, Tayyab and his team of 500 and more are transforming human talent to human capacity for nonprofit and for-profit companies globally. He is an adjunct faculty at Indiana University's Lilly School of Philanthropy and is the president of the Center on Muslim Philanthropy. Fueled by his life's mission to improve the human condition, he has been providing strategic guidance to both profit and nonprofit organizations for 20 years. He was an early entrepreneur, starting his first business at the age of 16 and was the founding member of a national nonprofit by the age of 17. He's an expert at getting things done, and we have all experienced that, with excellence by creating strategy around a shared vision, assembling champion lead teams, driving innovation, facilitating execution, and empowering tactics for any size job. He travels the world, informing, inviting, and inspiring individuals and institutions to adopt a people greater than profit lifestyle. Wow. Amazing work, and we've experienced his contributions to the Muslim community, especially in the non-profit sector, and his help has been invaluable to us. Welcome, Brother Tayyab.
Alaikum. Wow. There's some really good copywriters on my team that can write some stuff there. I'm humbled. I'm honored. You all are the true super sheroes and heroes here. I'm actually today chiming in from my parents' home in North Florida. And, some of you might know my father. He was one of the founders of the Islamic Circle of North America. And so, to be honest with you, my wife tells me every time I hang out with your mom and dad, it makes sense to me who you are. And so lots of love and dua to my parents, lots of love and dua to all of you who are parents, lots of love and dua to all the mothers, and the fathers who are out there concerned day and night about raising a generation of amazing superheroes and super sheroes. Thank you, CISNA. And all those giants who thought of CISNA when it was just an idea, and all those giants who built it, and all those giants who are here today that are on a mission to really, have CISNA be a vehicle that helps us all elevate, that helps us all grow, that helps the world, inshallah, become a better place. I'm your brother Tayyab. And I'm grateful and thankful to be your brother here to help you. Hopefully share some stuff that I know works, that I've learned, that I've studied, that I'm using, that I've implemented with my team. Some of those folks are on this call. First and foremost, want to also thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we'll go ahead and start with a quick short dua. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala rasul al-kareem. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. And one of my favorite du'as, dua Musa alayhi salam. قال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So folks, here in the next, I guess about 90 minutes or so, what we're going to try to do, is arrive at a common understanding around a few key concepts. What I can, around fundraising. It's interesting. This morning I was on a faculty call where I teach at Indiana University, and at this faculty call, one of the things that we talked about was how this pandemic has showcased some very interesting changes in the nonprofit sector. Where you see, surprisingly, you wouldn't have expected, but many nonprofits, they actually increased in their fundraising. Not all, but many. You would have expected, your intuition, when you think about, a government lockdown, businesses being closed down, no one can continue to do services, restaurants are closed, healthcare was down to critical care only. You would expect that the consequence of the economic machine slowing down would impact the entire nonprofit, or what I and my colleagues call the social good sector. And that's not true. Do we have an exact understanding yet? No, it's way too soon. It's way too early. We're still in the middle of this thing. So, but what we do know is that this pandemic has forced nonprofit professionals to have to act and do differently, than they did before, as they try to find sustainable fundraising. And so, a quick, short story about me and my journey. I mentioned to you that my father was one of the founders of CISNA, and so he's a physician, and my two older brothers became physicians, and I have some sisters who also, mashallah, they've have super successful professional careers, way more educated and successful than I am. They are my mentors and my guides. And so, but all to say that when I did sort of early on in high school start to struggle with my identity, my American Muslim identity, which is what you guys are dealing with as educators with the youth that you face every day. I, in the 80s and 90s, was struggling with my identity, but was lucky enough to be part of a group that got together and founded Young Muslims North America in high school. And that sort of connected me to philanthropy, although I didn't know it was called philanthropy then, but it connected my heart to philanthropy at that time. And it made me fall in love with it, to the point where I told my dad I wanted to do, philanthropic work. I wanted to do nonprofit work. I wanted to do social good work. And one of the things he said is you need to get on a strong financial footing first before you do that. And that's what led me to founding Intuitive Solutions in 2002, to be an organization that would allow me to do social good, people greater than profit, but also create economic value to sustain the system. It was first focused on healthcare. It was first focused on building capacity for healthcare. Somewhere around 2015, I was invited to speak at Indiana University's Lilly School of Philanthropy, where I first learned about the capacity problem in the Muslim nonprofit sector. And this research at Indiana University, this research at Al-Hibri Foundation, the short of it is, it talks about how American Muslim nonprofits, including Islamic schools, including masjids, including all the other nonprofits, they simply do not have enough capacity to fulfill their mission. They're largely stuck in the entrepreneurial or startup stage, even though they may be 10, 20, 30 years old, 40 years old, even some institutions are 50 years old, even, right? They're still stuck in startup. They don't have the infrastructure, the foundation for long-term sustainability to really scale their organization. That's what startup is, right? Startup is basically you're still a corner shop. You're not able to really grow and scale. And so that's what led me to really studying about, okay, how do I solve this problem? And it always came back to, we have to solve the money problem. You solve the fundraising problem. And I should also tell you, I will embarrassingly, shamefully admit that I'm the guy who one day got to a point where I decided I was not going to go to Jummah anymore at the masjid. Hopefully my mom and dad didn't hear that. But the reason why was because I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time, and I went to a Jummah khutbah. And the second khutbah was, I kid you not, a hostage-style fundraising situation. The khatib was raising money, and literally would the first khutbah was great. It felt good. Everyone felt great. We knew solutions. We had prescriptions. And he went down. As soon as he came up for the second khutbah, he said, I got to raise money today. And I got to raise 50-something thousand. And he would not start the salah until he had the money. And we sat there for an hour, over an hour. And on that day, I said, I can't go. This isn't Jummah. I can't go to Jummah anymore. And it's been a long time since that event happened, but I share that story to highlight that in my mind, what registered was the fundraising system in the American Muslim nonprofit sector was broken. And I wanted to pursue solving it. And I wanted to help solve the capacity problem so these amazing institutions could scale and fulfill their organizations even farther. And so that journey for me, I'm 40 years old. I turned 40 years old this year. That journey for me was very messy. It was very messy. It was messy on the nonprofit side, it was messy on the for-profit side, on the academic side, on the practitioner side, until now, in the last few years, my team and I have found tremendous clarity in that this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on teaching about fundraising and fund development, and we're going to focus on installing fundraising and fund development. And so all day long, every day, my team and I, that's what we do. Some of the American Muslim Islamic School nonprofits are on this call that we work with, where we basically teach, coach, guide, and install, fundraising systems. The first component I want to talk about today is, take a minute to read this, what's on your screen. Oh, these are educators, so I can read it together. Nonprofit leaders are much more sophisticated about creating programs than they are about funding their organizations. Is that a true statement? Would you say that's a true statement? You guys can nod or chime yes. And philanthropists, your donors, often struggle to understand the impact and your limitations of their donations. Do you think that's a true statement? Right? It is. It's very true, right? Like, I'll tell you, like, I'm working with nonprofits today, and their board, you always start with a board, right? And that board is stacked with subject matter experts, just stacked with subject matter experts. Like they know everything about education, for example, and academia and curriculum development and youth mental health and youth psychology. But they can engineer the ultimate program the world has ever seen. The ultimate curriculum, the ultimate Islamic value-based educational activity, non-activity, classroom-based, outside-based, online-based, doesn't matter. but it is going to be the Ferrari of all Ferraris when we talk about educational engineering for youth transformation. But when you get into, hey, how do we raise money? How do we sustain and afford and pay for this thing? Then it's like, well, okay, well, what do we do, guys? And that's really where we struggle. And that's true and why most American Muslim nonprofits are stuck in that entrepreneurial stage. And folks, by the way, Sister Leila, if you can assist, if someone wants to put questions or chats in, you can do that. And Leila, just interrupt me. Just interrupt me if you see something.
Thank you for the reminder, Brother Tayyab. Yes, please, if you have questions, just put them in the chat, and I am going to jot them down, and there is a Q&A at the end. That way you can go through your presentation, and we'll do the Q&A towards the end, if that's all right.
No problem. Either way, I'm fine. Either way, I'm fine. So, and then you see the next statement from Stanford, and we can send this article out to Sister Leila and the amazing folks in the CISNA leadership, and we'll get that article out to you. But the idea is we have to figure out how to match our funding sources. And I'll tell you, even me, I've started to think about, and that's part of what today's about. If I've done my job right, item number two is about those funding models. And some of this you're already doing, but today is about getting you to think about being intentional and strategic in how you're doing it, so you can scale it, right? You know, so and then what I also would love to end today's session with is I've got my whiteboard on my iPad next to me, and if you saw the video that was sent, I want to be able to, you know, take some, give you guys a playbook on how you can end the year or start the year off next year with your development campaigns, you know, and that's really what a playbook is, right? A coach on a football team basically has a clipboard and gives you the plays, and then you run the plays. So hopefully by the end of today's session, inshallah, you've got an understanding of the distinction between fundraising and fund development. And number two, I've sort of landed in your mind how you want to identify and see funding models. And then number three, you know, help you with a practical playbook that you can implement if you haven't already. If you are in the middle of your end of your campaign, then it's the time to ask questions, and I'll give you prescriptions or diagnoses to the problems that you might be, or challenges you might be facing with your end of your campaign, and then try to give you some other tips and solutions. Okay, so that's what we'll try to do today, if I've done my job right. If not, then, you know, you can request a refund. No, we can reschedule, inshallah, and do another section. So what does fundraising actually look like, right? And so if you were to ask this question to Tayyab, you know, 10, 12 years ago, you know, he would tell you, you know, that, you know, there are people who walk around and between the aisles and the rows, and they're asking for the money. He would tell you that, no, well, it's a bunch of fancy marketing to get you to go to a show where there's going to be an Omar Suleiman or a Yasser Qadi, you know, or a, you know, Linda Sarsour, you know, or somebody who's going to be on stage for us to go watch that night, and we'll have some fancy food, and that's what fundraising is, and you know, and then, you know, we're Islamic schools, so fundraising also looks like this, right? It's, you know, let's get bake sales or ticket sales, or some sort of scholastic. Well, my kids bring me those all the time. The scholastic book clubs, right? That's also involved there, right? You know, but then some of us, we are praying and hoping for the wealthy philanthropist to one day fall in love with our organization and leave everything that they have to us so that we can keep running on and on and on forever, right? So, but the truth is the chances of Bill Gates coming along, you know, and writing a check to your organization and funding it forever and ever and ever are slim, right? So what does fundraising actually look like? And so I have to give you this caution sign. folks, I have to give you this caution sign. There's a new paradigm up ahead. And that paradigm is basically this: fundraising is not an event. It's not a technology. You're not going to magically have launch good and it's going to save all, it's going to raise all the money you ever need forever. You know, it's not just one activity. It's not a person you're going to hire. You're not going to go hire Michael Jordan to raise money for you as this fundraiser who just goes and raises money no matter what Michael Jordan says in your interview process. Fundraising is a process. Just like accounting is a process. Just like educating the kids in your school is a process. Fundraising is a process. And that's the paradigm shift. I was on a call with a nonprofit recently, and there was this one board member who every meeting says, you know, how much should we raise? How much should we raise? How much should we raise? And you know, what I said to this board member was, I said, look, I said, there are gimmicks. There are gimmicks and strategies for money fast. That's not what we do and we believe in anymore. We believe in long-term sustainability for nonprofits so they can scale. So they have predictable recurring revenue, predictable income to budget against, to plan against, and to build against. And for that, it's fundraising as a process. And that process, just like your curriculum process ensures that a child understands math and can demonstrate that they know math, fundraising as a process ensures the right person is asking the right prospective donor for the right gift, for the right program, at the right time in the right way. These are called the 6 rights of fundraising. If you violate these rights, your system's going to be off. Your process is going to be off. And there will be some possible consequences. That process looks something like this. It's got 14 steps in it. 14 steps. And you guys can take screenshots. You can take screenshots if you want. Those 14 steps is the cycle that you're taking your donor through in order to build that process. Now, this is not a process. Going to a donor and saying, show me the money. Can you donate? We need money. We can't pay our bill. We have a budget shortfall. Brother or sister, you've supported us every year. Can you also help us this year? We're counting on you. This is not a process. And how many of you would say that you think that your donors are experiencing donor fatigue? I see some nods, some yeses coming along. I see some nods, I see some yeses. You know, donor fatigue, if I told you donor fatigue didn't exist, would you think I was crazy? You probably would, because you're experiencing something. You're experiencing something, and your intuition is telling you it's donor fatigue, but the truth is it's actually not donor fatigue, it's donor abuse. Donor abuse. Have you ever had that friend that the only time they ever call you is when they need a ride to the airport? Right? But they never call you to see how you're doing. They never tell you about the last trip they went on. They never brought you a souvenir, not even a postcard from the last trip, from the last ride you gave them to the airport. But they call you every single time for a ride to the airport. That person is committing friendship abuse. So if all you're ever doing is asking your donors for a ride to the airport, and you're never asking them how they're doing, you're never thanking them for the ride, you're never bringing them back gifts from the trip, you're never telling them stories from the trip. You're never telling them the difference you made on the trip. You're committing donor abuse. By the way, everything I just described is called stewardship. Stewardship is how you address and avoid donor abuse. Okay, I already answered that. So one of the things that we teach at the Lilly School of Philanthropy is how fundraising is an exchange of values. So as you think about your donors, think about the value exchange. If you can map the value exchange, and I'll tell you where this comes from. This is what we use in class to map the value exchange. But in the for-profit world, the value is pretty straightforward. You know, so for example, I bought these AirPods from Apple. So because Tayyab valued these AirPods more than the 200 something bucks I paid, which is a lot of money for earphones, right? Every time I go to the store, my son says, "Dad, can I get iPods now?" I'm like, "No," right? But you have iPads. I say, I teach, I work, I use it. It's my office work. But I valued the iPads, what are these things called? AirPods. I value these more than the 300 bucks in my pocket. So I gave Apple the 300 bucks, and in exchange for the 300 bucks, Apple gave me these AirPods. That's the value exchange. The value exchange dilemma for a nonprofit, when you think about the donor piece, is that the donor, what are they actually getting in exchange? So I'm going to draw this on my iPad. Let's see if it lets me share content. You should be able to see my screen. You're able to see? All right. So let's talk about this value exchange. In your case, for an Islamic school, so this is your Islamic school. And you have your value exchange for your parent. This parent is going to pay some amount of tuition. And you're delivering to their child. The child is actually the beneficiary of your services, right? And so since this child is the beneficiary of the services, if that parent is paying 100% of tuition, which may not be the case all the time, right? I'm working with many Islamic schools. It's not always the case. So then you need another funding partner. You need another funding partner. That funding partner is going to be maybe a donor. That funding partner is going to be maybe a corporate sponsor. That funding partner might be a government, like title funds or a government fund. I'm going to use it. I'm going to say just some sort of government fund that is contributing also to this Islamic school to make sure that one child is educated. So the value exchange for an Islamic school and the funding models for an Islamic school is far more complex. I'm not saying hard, I'm saying complex than, let's say, a masjid, for example. Then let's say, I could just any regular nonprofit, some charitable organization. Islamic schools or private schools, your funding sources are much more complex. And actually, I missed one here. Another one could be a granting agency or a foundation. So your funding sources are much more complex, but it doesn't mean that you can skip the value exchange equation. If you don't take care of the value exchange equation, then you risk committing abuse to these funding partners and you risk losing it. Maybe not so much as a government fund, but if you don't take care of the value exchange in a corporate sponsorship program, you may not get the corporate sponsorship again. If you don't take care of the value exchange for a donor, that donor may not give again. If you don't take care of the value exchange for the parent who's paying tuition, they may not bring their kids back to school again. If you don't take care of the value exchange for a foundation is going to ask you for reporting. If you're going to have a grant development and procurement operation at your nonprofit, which you should, and you don't properly fulfill grant requirements and reporting check-ins, you may not be in good standing with that foundation again, and you may not get those funds again. So what I'm highlighting here and what I want you to map in your mind is really, I want you to think about a visual where you map your funding sources. Maybe it's your homework. Map your funding sources. Obviously, I've got a parent. Then I may have government funds. I may have donors. And I'll tell you, with private schools, even the most well-developed private schools, non-Muslim private schools I've worked with, even though they have 20 and 30K tuitions a year, which I don't know of an Islamic school that charges that high, but these other private schools that are charging $30,000 to $50,000 a year, they still have donors. And the reason why they have donors is because they'll have a scholarship program. They'll have a financial assistance program. More importantly, you need donors to be the investors in the expansion projects of your schools. In the fundraising school, we call that capital campaigns. Capital campaigns are how you fund your lab. Capital campaigns are how you fund your next new building. Capital campaigns are how you fund adding a whole new grade to your school, right? And you can't run capital campaigns well if you don't have a strong base of donors. Then you have your capital campaign. So your parents, your government, your donors, your corporate sponsors, and then you have your foundations. And the way I want you to think about this is these are the funding sources for our Islamic school. I'm a little nervous, by the way, drawing in front of a group of educators. You guys are like the masters of the whiteboard, You're
doing pretty good.
Thank you. So I want you to think about this like this, and then obviously this is where the children are. And the reason why I think about it that way is because some of you are ops managers. Some of you are process focused. Some of you are process engineers. And what you know about operational excellence is that when you're building a process, that process has steps that need to be taken and need to be taken care of really well in order for that to achieve scale. Now, some of the nonprofits I walk into, Islamic schools I walk into, I'll say, hey, do you have a grant program? They're like, yeah, mashallah, we do. I'm like, really? I'm like, so tell me about it. Oh, last year we got $10,000 in a grant. Oh, that's great. How'd you do that? Oh, there was a volunteer who told us about it. They gave us a form. We filled it out. And then the secretary filled it out. And then we submitted it and we got that grant. It was awesome. Mashallah, Allah took care of us. I'm like, that's awesome. But in my head, that's not operational excellence. For me, operational excellence is like, I'm looking at your your revenue shop at your nonprofit like a Pep Boys, right? You go to Pep Boys, you got a tire problem, they got a tire bay. You go to Pep Boys, you got an oil problem, you got an oil bay. You got an alignment problem, they got an alignment bay. And each of those bays has a check-in, an expert, and a process. And that process specifies intake, specifies evaluation, specifies implementation, specifies outtake. So when you're looking here as leaders of your Islamic schools, you're thinking about your revenue shop like a Pep Boys, and each of these 5 across the top, and some of you may have only 3, and some of you may have a few more, but I'm generalizing in a large audience here. But each of those is going to be an intentional bay in your funding shop. Okay? So now the other piece to this is stewardship. Remember I talked to you about so what is stewardship? My son, eldest son, he goes to college right now. He goes to NYU. Every month on the first of the month, I put an allowance in his account, right? So let's say it's a couple $100. Now, if he calls me 5 days later and says, "Hey, Abu, Dad, can I get another $100?" When he calls me the first time, I'll be like, "Yeah, son, no problem. I'll put it in your account. $100 goes in." Let's say he calls me a few days later. He's like, "Hey, Dad, can I get another $100?" The second time he calls me, I'd be like, "Okay, all right, but I'll give the $100." Third time he calls me, he's like, "Dad, I need another $100." I'm gonna be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I gave you allowance. I gave you $100. I gave you another $100. What are you doing with all that money? I'm not giving you anything until you give me an explanation, son. You on drugs?" I'm gonna think he's on drugs. I'm gonna think he has a girlfriend. I don't know what's going on because he's just making me hemorrhage money to him, right? Allah protect him from all of that. So then let's take the same scenario and let's install stewardship to help bring in stewardship to help bring stewardship to life. So I give him the allowance on the first. He calls me 3 days later. He's like, "Assalamu alaikum, Dad. How are you?" "I'm good." He's like, "What are you up to? You good? Business good?" I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay." He's like, "I've been thinking about picking up a pair of Timberlands." I'm like, "Yeah, Timberlands? Okay. How much are they?" He's like, "Yeah, they're about $130. I'm like, "Okay, what are you thinking?" "Well, I'm going to school in New York, and it's my first year here. In Florida, we don't have snow, Dad, like and now I'm in New York, and apparently there's this snow. There's snows here. I'm gonna need something to walk between classes. What do you think? I should get the Timberlands." I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds like an awesome idea. Yeah, you should." He calls me back 2 days later. He says, "Dad, I saw some Timberlands. Turns out they're not 130. They're $100 on sale, but there's another pair that's $200 that I really like though. But I'm good to get the hundo pair or the 2 hundo pair." I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'll send you the $200. And what happens next? First snow comes, he sends me pictures. He FaceTimes me. "Dad, I'm hanging out with my buddies. Check this guy out. He doesn't have Timbs. He's walking in the snow with his sneaks. Those are busted. He's gonna end up buying new shoes anyway. He should have got Timbs like you helped me get." That's stewardship. That's what you have to do with your programs, with your parents, with even your government agencies. There's somebody on the other side approving that form. Your donors, you got to steward them. Your corporate sponsors that are, just because I wrote you a check, and I mean a corporation is writing you a check, doesn't mean that you just say, "Hey, give us $1,000. We're gonna give a half-page ad for you." You steward that sponsor. You send them a letter back. You include a copy of the magazine. You send pictures of the kids. You tell them thank you. You make a phone call. That's stewardship for the corporate sponsors. And then the foundations, similarly, with the foundations, don't treat it like it's a transactional relationship. At the end of the day, foundations, there's a warm-blooded, loving, caring creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the other side of that approval process. And you got to take care of that heart. You take care of that heart, I promise you, those foundations will take care of your heart, inshallah. That's stewardship. Stewardship is taking care of all the hearts around you and making sure they're warm and cozy and being taken care of. So that's principally stewardship. So I don't want to take too much time on it, but I'll dig in there. So I'm going to switch screens here, Sister Leila. Are there any questions in between as I'm switching screens?
No, just a reminder, they want to see what the paradigm shift is. So you're already deep into that.
Yeah, yes. We are deep into the paradigm shift. The paradigm shift is fundraising is a process. It's a process. It's not an event. It's not an activity. It's not a person. That's a hustle. That's a hustle, right? Do I need a hustle sometimes? Sure, right? But we need to move from thinking about acquiring funds with a hustle to building financial sustainability on a process. That's the paradigm shift. And then if you do this, you'll have passionate giving. If you do stewardship, if you deploy fundraising, fund development as a process, you will have passionate giving. Passionate giving is where your donor is vested in your mission. They're vested in your mission. They understand your mission. And one quick test that I give organizations is when I look at their materials and the language that the parents and teachers and everyone's speaking and the principals speaking, is it feature-based? Is it feature-based narrative or is it an outcome-based narrative? Educators, man, we're about the outcome, right? Like, I hear so many teachers and principals and founders say, man, my favorite day is when that kid comes back at 30 years old and they're leading something amazing. That's outcome. So if you're dreaming about your outcome of your curriculum and your education program and your system, then why do we go to donors and we're so feature-based, right? So feature-based, shifting from our narrative being about features, first, leader, best, better, those days are gone, right? Anyone can do anything better than us, right? But what is the outcome? What is the dream that we're pursuing and building? What is the real world that we're building together with our donors? The other thing that is a paradigm shift is Islamic schools. You have to be amazing at capital campaigns because you might be able to get your tuition, your overhead covered in your tuition. You get your tuition covered between title funds and parents. And you might need a small financial assistance. But what happens when that AC blows out? I own commercial property. Commercial air conditioners are like 20 grand. It's not like, the one on the house. They're expensive. So when that happens, how do you take care of that if you're operating on an annual fund? That's a big capital expense. What happens when you need to replace all the computers in your school? What happens when you need to expand the library and get more inventory? What happens when you need to redo that whole playground because when we started the school, all the Costco stuff is now running down, right? These are called capital campaigns. And your tuition budgets are usually covering your operating annual fund and your operating expense, but it's not covering the capital campaign. So what we teach in our class is when we think about donors, when you go to a donor, and you make an ask for an operating expense, the donor psychologically thinks about their own equivalent expense and thinks about their funding source and how they pay that expense. And people use their cash accounts and their current income and their current cash flow to pay for their operating expense. So if you go to a donor and you ask for a capital expense using a direct solicitation, then you're actually you're accessing their current income and not accessing their total wealth. So deploying a capital campaign for a capital expense, you're able to access a donor's total and comprehensive wealth. So that's the paradigm shift. I really want you to think about this picture here and think about a donor and their lifetime giving. What is their lifetime giving? Rather than let's go to them every year to help cover our annual budget. There's something we teach in our classes, something called the Donor Bill of Rights. The Donor Bill of Rights, it's not a legal document as in it's a law, but rather it's something the Lilly School of Philanthropy, where I teach, we say these are the rights of your donors, to be informed, to have access, to be assured. These are all important things, and we'll share this with the group. You can take a screenshot. I'll take a second, and those of you who want to take a screenshot, please feel free. Some of us were like, where are all the donors at? Right? And then I find Islamic schools often will be like, Brother Tayyab, our community is exhausted. We've been asking them for years. Like, can you connect us to other donors somewhere? Can you just find somebody who will do khutbahs for us, and we can schedule them all around the US and do khutbahs, and the truth is, or hey, we just need to be on social media because everybody's on social media. And if we're on social media, then obviously we have access to everybody on social media. That paradigm is the event paradigm. The event paradigm is, if I can just get a bunch of people in a room, make my ask, odds are, if everybody pays something, I'll walk away with a lot of those somethings. That's the old paradigm.
Brother Tayyab, I don't want to interrupt you, but there's a request to go back to the last screen.
Yeah, sure. You can interrupt anytime.
And then also, while they're getting a screenshot of this, there was a question about something you discussed a few minutes ago, feature-based versus outcome-based. And there's a question, can you expand on what does feature-based really mean?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So feature-based, I'm going to use it in the context of this iPhone here, right? So feature-based means, hey guys, this is an iPhone. It's got a camera on it. It's got a touch screen on it. That's feature-based. Outcome-based is, with this thing, you can connect with your mom every single day and make her feel special. So feature-based would be, we have the state-of-the-art facility. We have, marble floors. We have food, halal food. That's feature-based. Outcome-based is, our organization is a vehicle that is generating profound leadership for the world, built on Islamic values. Outcome-based. What's your dream for your child? It's ours too. Let's partner together and make our collective dream come true. Right? So outcome-based versus feature-based. In the major gift class that we teach, with major donors, we do something called disc profiling. Some of you might have done that. It's done often in business settings, but disc profiling is understanding that there are people who are data-driven, and there are people who are, big picture driven. I'm just giving you two examples to simplify the understanding. And so when we're out there doing major gift work, and major gift work is largely one-on-one. And in that major gift work, you're matching the style of that donor. So if I know that a major donor is, loves stats and details, then I'm matching that major donor style with that information. Major gift work and capital campaign, theory, we understand that, it's about nuanced, it's about, customized, it's about individualized conversations and asks. Remember the 6 rights of fundraising: right person making the right ask for the right program at the right time in the right way, right? Like Tayyab, I'm a big picture guy. You can't take me to the details until you've aligned with me on a big picture. And there's some people, they need the details. They just need the details. Then they're able to process the big picture. We know this, right? You guys are educators. You're dealing with kids that are developing in this. So that's kind of what feature-based and outcome-based is about. So real quick, an exercise that we teach at the Lilly School of Philanthropy is, this is paradigm shifting. I want you to get out of thinking that to grow your donor pool, you've got to just get in front of 1 million people, to thinking about how the universe of donors are around you. Your universe of donors are around you. And how you find those donors is through something called a constituency model. And you can take a picture of this. It's just a circle that looks like a bullseye. And how I would fill this out is I would put maybe, let's say my wife and I, we moved to a new city and we want to make some new friends, for example. So I would have Tayyab on one side, I'd have my wife on one side, and maybe I'd have my older daughter on the other. She's 19. And then I would say, hey, my wife's name is Bushra. I call her B. I'll say, hey, B, who do you know in Orlando? And then she'll name off 3 or 4 people, and we'll put those people in the boxes around her. And then she'll ask me, Tayyab, who do you know? And I'll fill out some names. And we'll ask Alia, who do you know? She fills her names out. And then we'll say, who do they know? Who are they connected with? And you do that exercise over and over and over again until you find pockets and segments, and this is called linking. Links to new donor networks. You find links to new donor networks. It's a lot less expensive than going out on Facebook and doing a pay-to-play. Facebook and social media, by the way, unless you're paying, you're not getting any exposure. It doesn't happen. So either you find a new network through an influencer strategy, or you find networks on social media through big-time dollar spend. Your best bet is to use your own network. And this is kind of what that journey looks like. Is what happens to us is we're in this paradigm where we think we just need a bunch of money and let's just find a Cinderella donor who writes us a bunch of money. It doesn't work that way. But what you want to do, you want to map your universe of prospective donors using the constituency circle. Then your goal is to make them a first-time donor. That's it. Because the research says first-time donor, stewarded properly, can potentially give up to 10 years. That's the lifetime giving. We want lifetime relationships. I don't want to hustle every year. You guys like hustling? No one like hustling. Right? We want this to be a system that runs on its own, and that's fundamentally what we're teaching. So you want that person to be a first-time donor, then renew and upgrade, then become a major gift donor, then perhaps support our capital campaign every year. The high-performing American Muslim Islam schools, they have a planned capital campaign every year. And they have a well-run development shop running every year as well. And so you're churning and building on top an annual fund in your donors and your relationships. This is what a healthy donor pool looks like. This is research, 30 years of Indiana University research. I'm telling you guys, like, what led me here was the fact that I was just so tired of being what one of my buddy calls the banquet beatdown. It's just not sustainable. And more people are getting exhausted of the banquet beatdown, right? But the high quality annual fund for your nonprofit is 10% of donors are contributing 60% of your money. The majority of the Islamic schools, the Islamic Muslim nonprofits, we're finding that only 2 to 3% of their donor pool are contributing 60% of their money, which puts them in a very risky situation. Because if one or two of those individuals pass away, move on, there's so much risk. And that's why many American Muslim nonprofits are usually in a scarcity mindset and a competitive mindset, especially over their donors, thinking that because they know that this person leaves, we're finished. We're going to lose a lot of those funds. It's not sustainable. So what you want to do is you want to build a strong base, build a solid middle, and a firm top, so that even if you have natural attrition, and natural attrition does happen, you're still sustainable. You guys with me so far? Paradigm shifting happening?
Tayyab,
Yep.
sorry. I think for some of us, you may just want to briefly touch upon the annual fund, which is the, yeah.
You got it. You got it. Thank you. I think that was Brother Thadik. Thank you.
Yes.
So the annual fund, and you saw it in the donor four-legged stool. The annual fund is what you need every year to run the organization, to do its mission work, to do its core mission work. For an Islamic school, when I do budgets for Islamic school, it's basically, your teachers, your operating expense, your regular operating expenses, your regular salaries, to run the school, to operate those teachers, those salaries, that facility, the curriculum costs, everything else. Nothing magically new happening yet. Nothing big yet, just to run the business. That's the annual fund. And then when I usually do my annual fund for my Islamic schools, I'm going to have a tuition projection. That's my income. And so that tuition projection knocks down some number off of my annual need. But I still have a gap. I haven't met an Islamic school where the tuition was covering the whole spend. I haven't come across it yet. Maybe there is. But there's a gap there. Then what I find is that gap is sometimes covered with title funds and government funding. In Florida, there's a lot of creative stuff going on with education. But then there's still always some number there, whether it's parents who can't afford the whole tuition, or whether it's we just have some additional payrolls and salaries and increases that we want to do this year, and we don't want to charge the parents yet. For example, we don't want to increase our tuition in a pandemic year, but we still need to increase our teacher salaries, for example. So there's some gap that needs to be funded. And that gap, then you're covering from your donor pool, usually. The value of your annual fund, if you do it right, is that it supports your capital campaigns. It supports your capital campaigns. And that process builds through link, ability, and interest. You find new donors, you achieve first-time gifts and renewed gifts. But to move to the top of the pyramid, you need to stay linked with these donors, have them involved so that they become advocates for your organization. Because the top of your pyramid grows really two ways. The top of your pyramid, meaning your large donors, it grows only two ways. One way is you're upgrading first-time donors, repeat donors. The second way is through your major donors finding other major donors for you, because they're in those networks.
Because if there's a specific way you want me to do it. See, you see Sonia what she does? She knows. Don't just leave it.
Please,
You didn't
mute yourselves. Hold on, let me find this person.
No. I'm doing it, but if you have a specific
No.
way, then I won't. But I'm not. I Are you no?
Trying to find this person.
This slide is just another representation of what we've already covered. So I'm going to stop there for a minute, just let you look at it and digest it. I kind of want to move along a little bit. It's another graphical representation of link involvement advocacy and link ability and interest. And then what you should achieve if you deploy those strategies is you should be able to move a donor all the way up. Planned gift is where the easiest way to understand planned gift is someone's leaving your school in their will. Another super important tool, like if you don't remember anything I teach you today, master the gift range chart. Learn, research, study the gift range chart. Because the gift range chart, it's a planning tool to help you understand how many donors you need at what gift level to help you achieve your goal. We're doing this right now with Islamic schools. I have some Islamic schools, they have anywhere from $60,000 to $300,000 in a budget gap that they need to raise in that school year. Literally the first thing we do is we build a gift range chart. The gift range chart tells us how many major donors we need. The gift range chart tells us how many mid-level donors we need. The gift range chart tells us how many base donors we need. And the second step we do is we do constituency mapping, which is now how do we find these donors? And then we then build campaigns to reach them. That's it. Way simpler than betting on a bunch of people in a room and holding them hostage, right? The case for support, this is somewhere where I see many Islamic schools really dropping the ball. The case for support, and you take a screenshot, you can evaluate this yourself. Go to your website, go to your material, and check off whether these questions are being answered in your content. Are you answering these questions very clearly and very succinctly? Because if you're going to go to a donor, these are the questions on their mind. Right? Alhamdulillah, the promise of Jannah is there. And many, mashallah, donors have lots of high expectations for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we need to, yes, be part of that you should give because it's the promise of Jannah. But, here's the other reasons why we need to partner together to make the world a better place. So that's your case for support. Take a screenshot of this one too. For a successful development program at your organization, we do believe in the power of volunteers, by the way. We believe in the power of volunteers. The research says that volunteers become your best donors, and you know that from your Islamic schools already. And so the other thing is if you ask someone for time, they'll usually give you money. If you ask someone for advice, they'll usually give you money also. So just remember, for those of you who get stage fright to make asks, which is part of why we can't make this shift, is because we think, a fundraiser is someone who's on a podium making a hard ask. But my class, when I teach for Indiana University, I tell my students, and this I learned from one of my mentors, it's not mine, is that we're not fundraisers, we're dream makers. And this is a non-Muslim who said that to me in my class. And he said, we're dream makers because donors have a dream of a better world. And because they can't do it on their own, we partner together and help their dream come true of a better world. And so think about the parents around you. They have a dream of a better world, dream of a better future for their kids, and a dream of a better world that their kids are going to be in. And with that conversation, You're shifting from benefits to outcomes, and you're linking them and aligning with them into a common vision and a common purpose and a common partnership. And that partnership is what is going to help really bring about that success. We covered this already. I want to shift into playbooking and also open the floor for QA. But we covered this already. This is what I drew on my whiteboard. It's really the Pep Boys, your funding models and your funding sources. You already know this. You already have this on your financial statement. But what I'm encouraging you to operationalize is an intentional strategy for each of these areas. And rather than absorbing the work with your existing administrative staff, which is probably already stretched thin, invest in a strategy, invest in the right people to execute on these strategies. It'll pay off big dividends. And that's what the guys at Stanford were saying. The guys at Stanford are saying is nonprofit leaders continuously invest in their programs, not realizing that if they don't invest in their funding models, their programs will never succeed. This was a big mistake that HP played, even though they're around, but they invested so much in engineering and they didn't invest in the other side, that while they have lots of good products, like HP created so many products that never made it to market because they didn't execute on the funding side of it as much as they should have executed on the engineering side. Don't make that same mistake. Identify your funding models, clarify your funding models, and invest in those funding models. It'll be hard to do it all at the same time. At least pick one or two for 2021 that you're going to invest in and to build excellence in, to build ihsan in, and inshallah, you'll have a sustainable system beyond that. I'm going to stop there. Let's do some Q&A, and then I can move to an end of your playbook.
Right. Thank you so much, Brother Tayyab, for helping us see the mind shift that needs to be made when it comes to moving from fundraising to fund development. There were a few questions about something simple, but I think what you're moving into is moving from the theory into practical application. And I think that's the playbook you're about to get into. The other is do you know of an endowment fund for Islamic schools like NATE for the Islamic centers and mosques?
Yeah. So what I would here's the thing with endowment building. What we're finding in the American Muslim community is because our fundraising is getting harder, getting tougher, and seemingly not working out as well as it has in the past. And I'm being very nice there. We're trying to find other solutions, and we're trying to find other permanence. And that's what makes us think about the endowment piece. Now, there's nothing wrong with focusing on an endowment, and actually educational institutions are in the best position to build endowments. But there's some, if you're gonna do endowments, do it right. And what does that look like? First of all, as an organization, if you're gonna do endowments, you need to invest in governance. I'm telling you, like, there are Islamic organizations and nonprofits that we know of. What usually happens is you have some major donor who's been supporting the school, that one brother, that one sister that's been writing the checks ever since the beginning, who's so exhausted and realizes that they themselves are aging. And they're usually the first to say, man, every year I can't keep writing this check. What are y'all going to do when I'm gone? Maybe you ought to think about an endowment. And then that information makes it all the way around and says, hey, we got this big donor who's saying, hey, let's do an endowment. And then maybe we don't need to have all these fundraising infrastructure. And then we, go and get a bank account and say, hey, yeah, here's an endowment. And that endowment ends up with one check in it. Doesn't grow, doesn't move, And then what ends up happening is administration changes, new principal shows up, new board shows up, and everyone's like, why is this money sitting here? Can we use it? Nope, can't use it, can't touch it. The original brother had a memo on the back of a napkin with an instruction for it, and the money gets stuck. I'm telling you, like, I'm working with Islamic schools where the money is locked up like this. This is not even an exaggeration. How do you solve this? Number one, be intentional about an endowment. The first thing that you do is you put a committee together, a small committee that needs to research and recommend and evaluate whether we are institutionally ready for an endowment. It needs to understand from the board what type of endowment is the best endowment for us. Because, by the way, endowment could be rental property. I'm working with another nonprofit right now. They have a donor who was in a real estate business. He was writing all the checks for years. They went to him and he said, you guys need to have an endowment. They went to him and said, hey, maybe you ought to do an investment account at Nate. And this guy said, Nate's only going to give you a 6 to 7%. My business can do 10 to 12%. How about I leave you all my rental property? They said, yeah, give it to us. He said, whoa, 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 whoa. First, tell me how you're going to run it. You see? But where that's going now is that entire rental business is landing into a trust. And that trust is going to say that there's a board that's going to decide on a management firm, a real estate management company. And that real estate management company gets this much goes back into the business, this much goes into the profit. So I share this to say that it's not as simple as just going to Shatara Capital, Azad, Nate, and just opening an account and going from there. For an endowment, there's a governance piece. Second, once you have the governance figured out, you need to have proper paperwork. There's one of the oldest nonprofits in the United States. There's over $10 million in endowment money locked up. And who's losing out from that? The American Muslim community. Who's benefiting from that? The banks. So take the right steps in that regard. Now, as a practitioner, as an academic of fundraising and development, you can't build an endowment until you have a strong, well-developed annual fund. Because nobody's going to leave you their life work until they're convinced that your work is making a difference in the world. And to achieve that, you have to have a well-developed fund development process. Because that process takes Tayyab on a journey from being a first-time donor to leaving you in his will. And along the way, I make one huge donation, multiple huge donations to your endowment. So now, after all that, I'll tell you the quick and easy thing is Nate, Shatara Capital, Azad, and I'm just naming the Islamic institutions. What they'll help you. They'll help you. And there are attorneys that'll help you. And so what you want to do is get the board to appoint a research and recommendation committee. That committee should go have the conversations, should evaluate what's available. There are templates for some of this governance and policies and procedure stuff. And they should come up with a plan. And when they come up with that plan, they get an approval by the board. Then you move to implementation and execution. Is that helpful?
Can I ask one more thing regarding these lines?
Yes, sir.
This is Sikandar from Oklahoma City. I'm a Mercy School board member. NATE is for Islamic centers mostly, but is there a willing we have so many Islamic schools to start an endowment, a central endowment fund that provides the resources, guidance, paperwork, legal framework? That's the mothership. You start with the mothership, and then locally, your individual will have a smaller endowment funds, because our community is maturing, and there are so many donors they have donated throughout their lives. And we think that if we approach them and have a good proper way to convince them if they can leave some of them from them inheritance to the school. I think the only thing that we don't have a centralized mechanism or the guidance regarding this.
Yeah, you know, and I would tell you, one of my other jobs is I'm the president of the Center on Muslim Philanthropy. And the Center on Muslim Philanthropy, one of the pieces is we're studying the American Muslim nonprofit sector, social good sector, and we're looking at how do we institutionalize sustainability. And the idea that you shared is definitely an idea that might be worth exploring. You know, all ideas need champions. All ideas need champions. You know, and so I would say to you that if you know, the same thing one of my mentors told me, which is, Tayyab, you know, you can be okay at a bunch of stuff. You can be good at a few things. You can only be amazing at one thing. Pick that one thing that you want to be amazing and do it. So, Brother Sikandar, the idea that you shared, it could absolutely move from being your dream to a vision on this planet that comes to life. But it would require, you know, somebody like you to actually say, this is what I'm going to do, and this is all I'm going to do. And so if you do decide to do that, you know, hopefully my sister Tahmina Chima and my brother in-law Zahid Chima won't be mad at me for convincing you to step off that board. Mercy Schools, where all my nephews went, and my sister and my brother-in-law were there too for a long time.
Yeah, I know them.
A
Zahid
pleasure.
and we were part of this board I'm still in the board. Zahid, yeah, he's done his dues. So he's outside the board now, but it's still his heart in the school.
Alhamdulillah.
Right,
Any other questions?
This is Yas. Sister, can I ask a question? This is
sure. I just want to let you know we're on from 12 to 1:30, and I mean we can always stay on after that. Just we're at 1:20 right now, and I know that you still want to go through the playbook. But go ahead, Brother Yasser, and ask your question.
Thank you so much. No, I understand. I'll be very specific. I'll go back to Brother Tayyab, what you were mentioning about stewardship. That's the one question I have is if you can just give us a couple of examples, exactly what kind of things that we would do at our level, at the school level, to you know, have this kind of you know, what, I don't want to go through the definition. So, and the second thing is, you know, what we face here, specifically in our example, is the shortage of volunteers. You know, board job is, unless somebody is getting paid for it, it's mostly done on volunteer basis. So if you can just point out, okay, at minimum, these are the things, keep in mind, has to be done. And if you have, like, you know, things like endowment and creating a separate committee to do the research into it would in itself is a task. So if you can, you know, just kind of, you know, expand on these two things, if you can, please. Thank you.
So to help bring stewardship to life, I'm just going to draw a playbook. I got my iPad right here. I'm going to draw a quick playbook to simplify this for you. Now here's a prescription. You know, use Google Sheets or an Excel sheet. And on this Excel sheet, let's pretend this is an Excel sheet. And then in column 1, I want you to have stewardship step. In column 2, I want you to have, you know, you could name it frequency or when. Somebody's in the waiting room. So this is stewardship step. And the column 2 can be frequency. My handwriting's getting really bad. Okay, frequency. And in the third column, we're going to say who does it. In the next column, we're going to have giving levels. And just to simplify this, I'm going to make 3 levels. We're going to have base, we're going to have mid, and we're going to have major. People ask me all the time, Tayyab, what is the amount that someone's a major donor? It actually depends on the size of the organization. a major donor for a lemonade stand is going to be very different than a major donor at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? So it's relative to the organization based on that pyramid I showed you earlier. Okay, so stewardship step, I'm going to say, just to really bring this to life, I'm going to say thank you phone call. The thank you phone call frequency is going to be within 1 week of gift. And we're going to, who's going to do it? We're going to say principal. And it's going to be for the mids. It's going to be board chair for the major. Right? So stewardship step is based on the experience we want to give to that donor. Another example can be, for an Islamic school, could be a handwritten note from student. And it happens for first-time donors. You see how you can specify? First-time donors, first gift. Sorry, my handwriting's so bad. First-time donor, first gift. Who does it? It's going to be maybe somebody in the administrative office. I'm just going to put admin here. And who does it go to? It goes to mids and it goes majors. Next, we could even automate some of this. We could say thank you email, monthly newsletter, donor update, annual mailer, annual report. So all of those things are stewardship, right? And it starts with what's the experience we want of each donor? How do we deliver that experience? What is that tangible activity that takes place to deliver that experience? And then who, at what giving level do we want that? And the reason why you do this giving level thing is because you obviously, if your donor pool has 1,000 donors in it, you may not be able to have your principal make a phone call to every base level donor. So for my base, I might just have a recorded video message from my principal. So I could put here recorded video, thank you for my base. Frequency could be 1 week of gift. Does that help, Brother Yasser?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there's, so one more thing, if do you think it's worth investing into creating sort of like a, you know, a video of let's say 2 to 3 minutes of video, just kind of, you can create a storyline, but would that be along the same lines?
Yeah, my recommendation is have at least one well-developed professional video for your school, at least one. Shouldn't cost you more than $2,000 to $3,000. If it costs you more than that, you need to send me an email and I'll send you some recommendations. You don't need Hollywood grade production. Nowadays, I mean, every kid, every high schooler, every college person, even adults, I've got CPAs and engineers. Hey, Tayyab, I have a side film business, man. Let me know if you got a gig for me. I mean, you can get well done, professionally developed videos, $2,000 to $3,000. The rest of your videos, I'll tell you, for my Islamic schools, I'm having the kids and the teachers just do short videos on the iPhone. There's that realism really brings it home. Everything doesn't have to be professionally developed. So to answer your question, Brother Yasser, yes, video storytelling is what's going to distinguish, you know, we're all academics, right? We read. Our parents aren't. You know, they're basically not doing that at all. So I would definitely recommend you know, thinking about your video storytelling strategy. If you want a template for the stewardship piece, just send me an email. Inshallah, I'll send you guys a template too. I have just an Excel sheet that's built out like this. I'll send it to you.
Brother Tayyab, do you want to share your email address?
Yeah, I could do that.
Or you know, okay. Or they could ask us and we can send it to everyone if that's easier.
No problem. I'm going to shift gears real quick. And one of the things that we promised to give you today was also an end of year campaign. But Brother Yasser said, I think I heard Brother Yasser also ask, Brother Tayyab, what is 1 or 2 or 3 things that we really should just invest in right now? Did I hear you right, Brother Yasser?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that was correct. Thank you.
So here's some, I get it. We're all low capacity, Islamic schools. We're stretching, thin with our staff. I'm not delusional here. I get it. And I want you to know that, building out this whole development system, if it's a 3-year gig to do it right, slow and steady, right? And so if I were the first thing I would tell you, this is a development Islamic school development checklist. That's what I'm going to give you guys. Okay. Number 1 is what does donor data storage look like? I have Islamic schools reaching out to me, Brother Tayyab, can you help us with a development plan? And the data's in QuickBooks is not donor data. QuickBooks is not a donor development system. QuickBooks is a financial accounting system. So, and then sometimes I end up with spreadsheets. Spreadsheets I can build on, but I can't, if it's all over the place and we don't have high quality data, we're stuck, guys, we're stuck. And the reason why this is important is because, remember, we're trying to build a relationship with these donors. And when my guys, my team, or if you bring anybody else in to say, hey, we're going to build an annual fund, we need to know who are these donors here. We need to understand their giving habits so we can then build a stewardship plan around them and build a relationship plan around them. And one of the things we teach in our class is something called recency frequency monitoring. Don't write this down. But we look at your database to see how recent have your donors given, how frequent do they give, and how much do they give? And what does their giving history look like? Based on that, you can build the development process. So the first thing I want you to do, guys, your homework, your playbook is, how are we storing data? I don't want you to run a hustle and go buy some expensive software. You don't have to do that. There are very inexpensive software systems out there, donor relationship management system. Don't get a free one either. Don't get a free one, please. Right? You shouldn't be spending more than 50 to 100 bucks a month, maybe 200 bucks a month, depending on your size of data, for a good software system. Okay. So we want a good donor software system. Number 2, what the software system will do is A, it's gonna have your donors in it. B, it's gonna help you also build rules and a dashboard for your stewardship program. That's literally what my team and I do, is we build the plans on a spreadsheet, but then we'll implement it in the software so that it's got rules and tags and flags built in. Okay. Number 2, your homework is evaluate our case for support. So I hope that you took a screenshot of the case file. Do we as a board know really why do we exist as an organization? And it can't be any more that we're keeping our kids in a bubble. Come on. That's a Tayyab Yunus opinion, right? If you looked at the research, the largest demographic in the American Muslim community is first and second generation born now. They're larger than the immigrants. And you look at what are their values and how is our Islamic school lining up with their values? Who is our audience and how are we serving that audience really and truly? And why do we want to serve them for what end? These are some of those key strategic questions that should land into your case for support. Case for support. I'm going to simplify this for you. Why should anyone care to donate? Harvard Business has a research article on something called the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is what we inside our organizations suffer from. Because we have information in our brain, we assume everybody else has that same information. That's called the curse of knowledge. And so we have to abandon those assumptions that everyone else has the same information we do. And we have to invest in understanding what information do they have, do they, meaning the audiences we want to reach, and build strategies and communication methods to reach their heads and hearts to get them to act. The case for support helps you achieve that. You'll move the needle on your organization. I mean, look around. Your non-Muslims will donate to Islamic schools, will send their kids to Islamic schools. Muslims and non-Muslims, Americans, right? Understand what segment of American citizens or non-citizens are your audience, and be very clear about the value exchange. Understand why they should care to donate, and then deliver that message to them. This is called a case for support. So donor data and case for support. The other thing that I'll give you a prescription. There was a question, I think it was also from Brother Yasser, about the board and the human capacity scarcity problem. So usually you've got a board that looks like this. And in my board governance class, what we teach is the board basically needs to, number one, it needs to be about governance. Number two, it needs to be about resourcing. Number three, it needs to hire and fire the CEO. And in Islamic school, that should be a principal. What happens though in low capacity environments is this board is also, paying the bills. This board is also interviewing teachers. This board is also, solving a plumbing problem. This really happened to me. Like I was on a conference call with a board, and the brother basically said, "Sorry, I was late. I was working with the plumber at the Islamic school." Like, whoa, my board member is going, not to say that it's beneath them, but to say there is a method and an organizational structure for that organization to achieve effectiveness. But let's say you're still a board in an organization low on capacity. What's the prescription, Tayyab? We want to be a governing board. We don't want to change the toilet paper at the school, right? So for that, you got to use a committee structure. And these committees can be board led. So this could be a finance committee. This could be a development committee. These committees need to recruit and hire volunteers. The principal and the whole board cannot be on every committee, right? So this board, when it convenes, it governs. But you can have volunteer committees that are doing finance, that are doing development, that are doing endowment. So you have board-led committees made up of volunteers. These are volunteers, sorry. And these committees have job descriptions for them. The most simple thing is they are to research and recommend. If the school doesn't have for my endowment committee, I'm going to say this committee is assembled for 90 days to research and recommend this ABC. And it has to disband. The problem often with American Muslim nonprofits is we assemble a committee. The committees end up organizing and developing more power than a board sometimes. It's weird, right? So you have to have that specified in your governance model. But Brother Yasser,
just on December 12th, CISNA is actually hosting a webinar on governance, roles and responsibilities. And the focus of that is what the role of the board really is and how to shift from being administrators and micromanaging to governing and maintaining financial sustainability, inshallah. So that'll be coming up December 12th.
Let's quickly go to an end of playbook. And then I can even stay longer and answer some questions for those who need to stay longer. I know we promised till 1:30. But a real quick playbook. The first thing you start with, guys, number one, is you need to know what is our goal. You have to have clarity. I'll tell you, so many times I will meet with folks and say, how much you want to raise? And the lack of clarity around, oh man, if we got this much, it would be awesome. If we got this much, man, mashallah, our expectations isn't high, brother Tayyab. Maybe if we got this much, it would be really cool. We would just make it. And I'm like, what is your financial system telling you how much you need to run this organization through the end of this school year? And what does your projection tell you you might need for next year, for next school year, right? Let's not wing it anymore in terms of what our needs are. Let's have clarity. So in other words, you need your goal. Number two, you got to make your gift range chart. If you need help with your gift range chart, you can email me. Inshallah, I'll help you with a gift range chart. The gift range chart tells you how many donors you need at what giving level. There's a perfect science to it. It also tells you prospects. It tells you gifts. It tells you prospects. At the major gift level, the science says 5-to-1. 5-to-1. If we need to raise $100,000, then the gift range chart is going to tell us we need at least 2 gifts at 5,000 each, which is 10% of our goal. 2 gifts. We need 2 5K donors. And the research tells us that if I need 2 gifts, I need 2 gifts. How many prospects do I need? 10. I need to have 10 conversations to expect to close 2 gifts. Then next, what I'll do is I'm going to build a constituency map to see who are we linked with that might be interested, that has the ability to donate 5K. It's a much easier written, documented method that works, proven method that works to be able to hit our goal. Rather than a board saying, this is what we got to raise, give it to the principal, go raise it. Principal's trying to manage the school, run a hustle, different people running a hustle. We hit up a deadline, and then it's the sky's falling, text messages like crazy. But this method tells us who are those 10 people that we might need. After you've identified these, number 3, you need what is our campaign message or case. Why do we need to donate? Why do they need to give? One thing with Islamic schools that we've been doing that works, that's working, is financial assistance. And the case that we build is, hey, because the research says Muslims, this is ISPU research, it says that people, the number one reason why people give is because they believe people with more should help those with less. And religiously inspired, that people with more should help those with less. So, which is the name of the game the Islamic schools are in. You have people who mashallah, they pay full freight, and you have some people who can't do full freight, and so because they can't do full freight, you have to have a financial assistance program. And so therefore, and then you show a process. See, sometimes you'll go to a donor saying, hey, we need $20,000. The donor says, why do you need $20,000? You're like, some people can't afford it. Then this donor says, who? I see those same people you're giving free tuition to driving around in a Mercedes. Then really what's happening is the lack of transparency, the lack of process, the lack of philosophy makes that donor a skeptic. So you build that infrastructure into your financial assistance program. You have clarity around your financial assistance program. Where they say, hey, we have a financial assistance program. This is the type of person that qualifies. here's the process and the evaluation for this. And we have 10 scholarships available. We have 20 scholarships available. And we need $50,000 to do this. Now, and you have, if you want to help us make our community stronger and better, then please participate in supporting our financial assistance program. And then now when you go to have those conversations, you've prospected these donors, you cultivate these donors, you have these conversations with these donors, you can say, we have a financial assistance program. Here's the process for that. We've got some candidates who've applied. We've enrolled them in the school because we didn't want to say no to them. We're running, I'm running red, and but we didn't want to stop the education. We're running red, but now we need to know if you can help with this financial assistance program. Then now you have a well-developed, intentional case for support and infrastructure to support that strategy behind it. Does that help? Does that make sense? So then I have my campaign message. Now, number 4, I have my communication plan. A communication plan basically is, number 1, I'm going to put an A here. Channels to reach my audience. What some people do is when they think communication plan, they automatically say, okay, that's Facebook, that's Instagram, that's, Twitter. Do not invest in infrastructure where your audience don't exist. Understand where your audience is. And for some of you, it might rightfully be Facebook. For some of you, it might rightfully be Instagram. For many of you, it might be WhatsApp. And nobody's on Facebook. So don't invest in infrastructure where your audience isn't there, for example, is what I'm trying to say. So after you know where your audience is, then you map the channels to your audience, and then you build your channel strategy. For example, let's say that we said that the majority of our audience is on WhatsApp. Lots of Islamic schools, you got parents groups, board groups, teacher groups, student groups on WhatsApp, mashallah, right? So if we're heavy on WhatsApp, then let's go big on WhatsApp for our end of year campaign. Nothing wrong with that. And let's be really good at WhatsApp, not paragraphs and pages and dissertations in a WhatsApp message. The research actually says that people will scroll your email, scroll your webpage, scroll your message. And what they're doing when they scroll is they're actually processing the amount of time they're going to need to invest in reading that. And if their brain tells them that this is something I can't move quick on, they're going to park it. They're not going to look at it. This is not Tayyab. This is research. You Google this and find what I'm telling you right now. So in other words, what I'm saying is, whatever channel our audience is in, let's be amazing at communicating on that channel, right? So that's the channel strategy. Then the comms plan needs to, now that we have the channel strategy done, number C. C is build a copy. What do I mean by that? I wish I could show you an example. Maybe I'll show you an example in a future class. But write all your copy out ahead of time and feed that to your board, feed that to your parents, feed that to your students, feed that to your teacher. Build out your copy, template your copy, give it to them, let them boost it out through their network. And that's what the copy strategy is. So this is real quick, 1, 2, 3, 4. I would give the board the responsibility of major donors. All of my study in the nonprofit universe points to the fact that, organizations where the board, where you have 100% giving from the board and 100% involvement from the board in fundraising, those organizations succeed, have a higher rate of success. It tells the audience, it tells the universe that they are committed, not because they're standing in the parking lot. but it's about the money. You know, so you want to have your board engaged in that major development, major donor cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship work. So I'm going to stop there for a minute and take questions.
Thank you so
No
much.
money, no mission.
No money, no mission. That's right. Thank you, Tariq.
Brother Tayyab, that's a wealth of information. I think it's going to take us all some time to process. And I would remind, I don't know where that sound is coming from, our audience that it is going to take some time to process this information. So we'll open the floor for questions about anything that he's already covered or something that he may not have covered that you have questions about. And you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly or put it in the chat box. We'll monitor the chat box. Brother Tayyab, I'll ask one. Walking away from this workshop, what would a board member's first step be? Let's say this is all new. This is something we know we needed. We knew we needed to make a change. Now we know how to get started. What's the first step?
Yeah. If I'm a board member and I am intersected with finance, you know, a couple of things I'm doing is I'm clarifying I'm nailing down our budget. I am also looking at our funding sources. And I'm probably saying, okay, tuition is a big piece. I'm probably saying donors are a big piece. I'm probably wondering, is it sponsorships? Is it title funds? Is it grant funding? I'm probably looking at the trend. I'm wondering if my donor money is shrinking or increasing. I'm wondering where the risks are. That's probably, if I'm a board member, you said board member. So if you tell me principal or fundraiser, I'll give you a different answer.
No, I think we have a lot of board members, and
Okay.
and I also think we need to shift as Islamic schools that the financial sustainability is a board issue. Yes, principals play a big role in that, but it's something that the board really needs to take the handle of. There are some questions in the chat box, so I'm going to go through these. Are you going to share the slides? Can we share your slides?
We'll send you some slides, inshallah.
Okay, great. And we will post this recording on our website so you can watch it again and listen to the message. And I thought I saw, can you review the 6
Rights?
rights? Yes.
Let me switch to my
Acronym. 6 right things to do.
Oh, 6 rights of fundraising?
The fund rate of the donor, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Is it? Can you clarify that, Zahira?
It was the right person asking the right prospective
Six
donor.
rights
Yeah.
in fundraising.
Yeah.
You guys can still see my screen, Leila?
Yes.
Okay. 6 rights of fundraising. Here it is.
There it is.
There you go. Mhm.
6 rights of fundraising.
So what this means is like, let's say that I was on your board, and let's say that I was the responsible for the development committee. And that's probably if you're a board member on this call and you don't have development staff, my quick prescription would be put together a development committee. Take somebody on your board and say, hey, you're not going to do anything for the next 90 days except, evaluate and return a recommendation on a development strategy for our school. And then give that person empowerment to go look at other schools to see how they're doing development, to go talk to research best practices, to bring in 3 or 4 different consultants and then come back to the school, come back to the board with findings and recommendations. If you're in a fundraising crisis, then I would probably have one person, a separate person, sort of responsible for fundraising and development for this year's budget gap. So then I'm betting on long game and short game. When I think about now, let's say that you assign me that person who needs to go out and raise some money for this year's shortfall. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm identifying our major donors. So let's say that in our school we have 5 or 6 families that are doing all the major that are supporting the organization. Then I'm going to look at their giving. I'm going to see if their giving is at the level they've given in the past, and I'm going to build an individual approach. That individual approach will be the right person talking to this family. I already prospected this person, right? And then for the right gift, I'm looking at their giving in the past to determine what I want to ask them this year, right? For the right program, I'm looking at how they supported the school in the past to see how I want to make my ask this time. At the right time means I want to start off by finding out what is their situation, what is their condition, how do they give in the past? Are they Ramadan gifters? Like I know some donors, they want to maximize the akhirah ROI. They only give in Ramadan. And then I have some donors who give end of year because it's, tax, they ran their tax numbers late, for example. In the right way. Is it a text? Is it a phone call? Is it parachuting into their living room? Is it bringing them to, going to meet them with a friend? So that's how I apply these 6 rights in that process. Hopefully that was helpful and brought it to life.
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Another question was about hiring someone who's a fundraiser position at a school, creating a full-time fundraiser position. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I studied and learned and believe in development as a system. I don't know how to do hustle fundraising anymore. Probably if I'm in Islamic school, I'm probably bringing in a consultant. If I can't, I'm probably bringing in, and there's so many, and there's amazing development consultants out there. And it might be a 1K monthly lift. It might be a 2K lift. It might be a 3K lift per month. But there are lots of really good expert strategists who will give you a plan and who will coach you through the plan. We do that. I do that. My team does that for Islamic schools, and I know others who do it too, as well. So that's probably what I'm doing first.
Brother Tayyab, if I can just reiterate what you're saying, and I think the motto today was we're moving away from fundraising and really looking at development. So if you're looking at a position, you're looking at a development director, a development consultant, someone who can really help you look at your big picture and how to create a development system, that you can maybe move forward with once they've done their consulting component, and you can put someone else in that position. We are close to 2 hours. The audience has been engrossed. Brother Tayyab, who knew finance on a Saturday afternoon would be so fascinating? But I think it is an area of need, and our schools are really trying to figure out how to move forward, especially with the pandemic, knowing that people are more concerned about their financial stability, on sustainability at home. So how do we now go out there and ask them to help us sustain our schools? We do need to close out, so I'm going to ask that if you have any questions for Brother Tayyab, he did share his email and his amazing and absolutely gracious with his time and responding to questions. So feel free to reach out to him or us if you are more comfortable that way. We can also reach out to him. If there's a need for a follow-up, maybe with more specific, maybe we can look into that as well. He is volunteering today. You know, may Allah reward you for every second that you've donated to our schools today. And I'm going to ask that you give us some closing remarks very briefly, and then I'll ask Brother Yasser if you don't mind to close out with a dua.
Thank you so much, and Jazakumullah khairan. I care passionately about and dreaming about a generation of heroes and sheroes of youth who really, when I think about that word leader, I think about, these folks who are leading themselves and leading their families and leading their communities. And you are the folks who are designing that curriculum and who are leading those vehicles, those capsules. Like your Islamic schools are like capsules, right? They're these engines that, these blank slate kids enter and inshallah come out on the other side as totally inspired, empathetic, amazing leaders. And I'm thrilled to meet you. I'm humbled to meet you all the time. Yes, I and my team were dedicated to trying to solve the capacity problem in the American Muslim nonprofit sector. And I'm thankful and grateful to organizations like CISNA that are doing this teaching. Today was really to open your mind, really to help arrive at a common understanding. It's long game stuff. I want you to don't feel worried, don't feel stressed. If you did absolutely nothing different, you'll still be fine, because Allah promises that. What we're going over and what we're talking about, what we're looking at is a way to implement excellence around development and increasing your revenue. And it's long game stuff. It's 2-3 year stuff. And it's not going to come to life until you believe and understand it, believe in it, and prioritize it. That's all. So right now you're at that understanding stage and learning stage. Don't try to act and jump into it too fast. Embrace it, learn it, understand it, plan it, think about it, implement it. Don't ignore it though. You have organizations like CISNA and the Center on Muslim Philanthropy, and we have a class coming up too. We're doing more classes with CISNA, with ISLA. We're doing some stuff with those guys too, that we'll make available to you all, inshallah, to help you. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. If I said anything good, all good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I didn't say something correct, forgive me for that and hold me accountable for that. You have my email. If I can help you in any other way, inshallah, we will. Jazakallah khair. Thank you.
Wa iyyakum. Brother Yasser, would you mind closing us out with a dua?
Thank you so much. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم إني أدعوك باسمك الواحد الأحد الفرد الصمد وأدعوك باسمك العظيم الحي القيوم. Oh Allah, made this presentation beneficial for us. Ya Allah, give barakah in it, and may Allah reward all those, Brother Tayyab, CISNA, and all those who made this effort on this day of Saturday to bring us this amazing presentation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the sustenance financially and every which way possible to our Islamic schools. And may Allah give barakah in each and every community in their efforts to bring the Islam in its true sense to our communities. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept you from all. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen.
Barakallah feek. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khair again, Brother Tayyab. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.